Well, there's nothing more fun than going to the store, spending 70 bucks on a bit, and then in your first pass, you hit a nail. There's a 3-inch nail embedded in the tree right near the end. So I saw a bunch of sparks, and now my carbide's all chipped and it ain't cutting worth crap now. So I gotta go buy another bit, which sucks, but whatever, such is life when you're working with live edge slabs and trees that are cut out of residential neighborhoods, right? People build forts and nail signs and fence boards to the trees, and then they never remove the nails, then trees just grow around them. Almost every log I've cut has had metal in it of some kind. All right, so I got a lot of information to share with you guys about flattening these live edge slabs, because I have learned a lot in this process. I'm on about my third one. I flattened probably a half dozen other slabs using the same rig, and this is a bit of an art form, getting these slabs just right. Now, what I learned using the router sled is when you got a razor sharp bit, your bit's brand new and you start cutting, you can take a lot in one pass. I was doing like 1/2-inch deep passes, but with a slab this size, by the time you get to the end, you can definitely tell that the bit is working hard. So I recommend only taking 1/4 inch at a time. I found that taking 1/4 inch of depth of material off the wood each pass allowed you to really, the router wasn't working super hard. You can move it fairly quickly, and you got a cleaner cut, and you could take the full diameter of the router bit. When I was taking 1/2 inch deep, I was having to overlap each pass and only take about 2/3 the diameter of the router bit. So it's much slower cutting, many more passes. So trust me on this one, only take 1/4 inch at a time. The other negative thing between taking a 1/2 inch of material, you think it's quicker because you're doing twice as much material, but I've noticed is on the wood here you can see I've got these little tear outs. And what happened is just the router, moving too much material at the time, it was tearing out, it was bogging down the blade, I guess, slowing the rotation down a little bit too much, and tearing out wood on the edge of the cut. So, your cut is flat, but then you have this tiny little tear out section at the bottom, so that when it comes to sanding, I now have to sand that 32nd out, or even, maybe up to a 1/16th. I don't have to hand sand that, or with the belt sander get it down, or do another shallow pass to get that tear out of there. So that's another reason why you only want to take 1/4 inch at a time, because it's not gonna bog your machine down as much, and it's gonna give you a cleaner cut and less sanding. Okay, so that's critical. Now when you're sanding, I know a lot of you guys follow Alex Steele's channel, and he was talking about this in the other video, and it works with metalworking and with woodworking, is I take my belt sander and I'll do passes on a 45-degree angle. So I'm passing my belt sander back and forth, overlapping my strokes on this direction, so that way you get a scratch pattern on an angle that way. And then once I've done the slab, I'll switch it and I'll go back the other direction. That way you can see your scratch patterns crossing over each other. And you'll know when you've taken out all the scratches from the other direction, because you'll see it on the wood. And then I'll do a final pass running with the grain and smooth out that last scratch pattern. So that way you're taking down more material. So I'm briefly going to explain to you guys how this works, and this works on so many different dynamics. When it comes to tool sharpening, it's the same process, and it's about understanding what's going on at a microscopic level. So say this is the surface of your piece of wood, right? Now I'm going to just exaggerated view here. When you run your belt sander, say in one direction, the 45-degree direction, you're basically cutting. What the belt sander is doing is cutting all these scratches into the wood. Say we're going this direction, right? So you're getting this scratch pattern on the wood, 45 degrees. Now if you just keep going in that direction, all you're kind of doing is maybe digging these grooves a little bit deeper, and it's a slower process, whereas when you change the direction and then you run your scratch pattern across that, what the sander does is it knocks down all those little high points in between the ridges there and cuts a lot quicker, right? So that when you go perpendicular to your pattern, it takes the material off a lot quicker. And this works with sharpening stones. When you're sharpening your blades, the same thing, right? The sharpening stone is putting a scratch pattern on your blade in one direction. And then if you change the way you're holding your blade and cut perpendicular to that scratch pattern, you'll remove more material off your blade and sharpening will go a lot quicker now. This is why a lot of people do a figure 8 pattern when they're sharpening their blades on a sharpening stone, because the scratch pattern is then changing countless times and you're removing material a lot faster than, say, just going in one direction and kind of just digging these grooves a little bit deeper and removing less material over time. So that's a little sanding theory for you guys. Now I'm going to do, on these slabs, I start with a 60 grit, then I go to an 80 grit, then a 100, 120, and 180 all on the belt sander. So that's going to give me a really fine finish, and then I'll go over it with probably a 150 and then a 180 on the orbital sander, just to make sure I remove any long scratch marks that the belt sander would leave. The random orbital will smooth out any kind of straight scratch marks that the belt sander will leave. But I really like the belt sander because it removes tons of material way faster than an orbital sander. So when I go up to the 180 with the belt sander, that's about as high a belt grit as I can find, I'll switch to my orbital sander and I'll go back to a 150. Now what the 150 will do is knock down any other ridges that the 180 belt sander left, and then I'll jump back up to the 180. So that way I'm sure that I've got a nice smooth surface and I'm not going to have any scratches showing through. Now when it comes to using an orbital sander, I find that going below 150 is risky, because depending on the kind of sandpaper you're using, a lot of times they'll have uneven grits on that, and you'll get that little, what's called pigtailing. I call it pigtailing, where the orbital sander will leave these little swirls because of the way the disc oscillates or whatever when it's sanding. And you don't see them really easily until you put a finish on, and you got these pigtails in your finish and they look horrendous. And kind of the rule of thumb with sanding is once you get to a 150 grit, that's kind of the lowest grit you can get where you're not likely going to see any pigtailing going on when you put a finish on. So I kind of just start at 150 because I don't want to go to the lower grits. But if you're using klingspor, I don't know how to pronounce it, but if you're using klingspor sandpaper, that's the only sandpaper I recommend you use. It's really affordable, and it's the highest quality sandpaper you can get. So it comes in these yellow boxes. I'll show you a little picture. In Canada, you can get them at like KMS tool stores. A lot of people stock them, different cabinet wholesalers and stuff like that. I don't know if you can find them at Home Depot and stuff like that, but I recommend you use the klingspor hook and loop discs because they just do a finer job with their grits. Whereas you buy the cheaper small packages from like Home Depot or whatever, they're just, it's just uneven, not as consistent quality. So use klingspor sandpaper, okay? Bottom line. Start at 150 if you can. Anything before that, I use a belt sander so that I don't risk getting pigtails from the orbital sander. You can finish up to whatever grit you want after that. I usually do 180, that's plenty smooth for me. And if you're putting a finish like 3 coats of lacquer on there, you don't need to get a super high grit sandpaper, because the lacquer itself is what's gonna build up and provide you with like a glass, smooth to the touch kind of finish. So don't get crazy overboard with your sanding. A lot of times I'll just do 150 and just straight lacquer over top of that, and it's still glass smooth to the touch when you're done. I don't know if anybody watching this video knows a better way to take off the bark, but I found the best way to remove the bark for me is to hit it with a hammer, kind of compress it, and that kind of squishes the bark and makes it a little bit more crumbly. And then I've just been using this little flat bar hive tool, whatever. And then it kind of just flakes off. Certain parts just fall off when the wood dries, and other parts seem to just hang on to the bitter end. So I don't know if there's a method or some sort of something you can put on the wood to make the bark release. If you got any information on how to remove bark without damaging that live edge, please put it in the comment section down below. Other than that, that's the best tip I can offer you for removing bark. It's just hit it with a hammer. A lot of it will crumble off just from the impact of the hammer. Then you got to be careful not to dent the edge. Whatever's left, just whack it off. Whack it off, yeah. Pry it off. The stuff that comes out of my mouth. All right, guys, that is as far as we have gotten for today. I'm kind of contemplating how I'm going to finish this top. I'm pretty sure we're going to go with lacquer, but there's lots of cracks on this top, and I think it'd probably be best to fill those with resin so that food and stuff doesn't get wiped in there, and it's a pain to get it out. So I'm kind of hemming and hawing. If any of you guys have any tips on how to fill with resin, I think you want to seal the wood with maybe 2 coats of lacquer first, then create a little well, pour the resin in so that it doesn't, soak into the wood, and then when you lacquer over it, right, then you would get differences in finishes. So anybody who has any experience with that, filling in voids and resin, I'd appreciate any information you gave me in the comment section or hit me up on Facebook with that, okay? Because this is a gorgeous slab and I don't want to screw it up. And as well, the clients, they stopped by the other day, we looked at the slabs, we talked about the pieces that they want to make. And so we're obviously going to make a big, beautiful table out of this one. And then these 2 slabs over here, they've got a little kitchen nook that they need a kitchen table for. So that small slab is going to be perfect for that, as well as that little crooked one is going to make a desk, like an office desk. So I'm looking forward to pumping these pieces out. And as far as the bases go, they actually want, a really modern design, West Coast kind of modern design. So we're going to be making them out of like square tubing steel. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, because I'm just a wood guy, but obviously if we're making steel bases, we gotta make them out of Damascus. Oh, that would be so funny. So I'm gonna get to the billets, tomorrow, or just go to the metal supermarket store and grab some square tubing. I think we gotta, start small, work your way up to the Damascus bases. That would be pretty amazing, in Damascus table bases. Maybe next collab, me and Alec can do that. But until then, I'm going to just do basic square tubing. I got my little MIG welder set up here. I'm going to have to dust that sucker off and brush up on my welding skills. Probably be using a little bit of Bondo to fill the voids and get it nice and smooth. And then we'll send them off to get powder coated. Nice kind of matte black, powder coated, clean looking bases. And then just a big chunk of wood on top. It's going to be really simple design and going to look damn sexy. Let me tell you, I can see it all in my mind right now. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be grabbing the metal hopefully tomorrow and getting to work on those. Oh, if you're just showing up here, this is the first, kind of time we've spent together. I just want to know, I really think we have a connection here. And I don't want you to just, be like, hey, this guy's a quack, and go click on some thumbnail over there and run off with somebody else, when I really think we could make something of this relationship. So please, just hang in there a little longer, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video, because what we got here, it's beautiful, okay? So until then, guys, watch these videos, subscribe, hit the like, share it, and until next time, Samurai out.